Welcome back to another video, guys. Now today I'm going to review and share with you all what life has been like with my Indian Scout Bobber now after the first year of ownership. But first of all, I want to start with what grabbed my attention with this bike to begin with and why I handed my money over for this bike and nothing else that was on the market at the time. Well, going back around 2 years ago now, I pretty much was constantly looking at the Harley Davidson 48 bikes, and I pretty much had my heart set on getting one as well in the future too. But then I came across this picture online of an Indian Scout Bobber, which I've never seen before in my life, and I just instantly fell in love with the look of it, started looking at videos with the sound of it, and yeah, then I pretty much ended up with an obsession looking at those instead of the Harley. Bear in mind, I've never been into road bikes. I've always been into sort of performance and classic cars, as you can probably see on my channel. That's what I was always into, but since I've had this thing, I just absolutely love it. I think it's kind of changed my life in a way, for my life outside of work, etc. I just cannot wait to get out on it. So now let's get to the bike, what it's been like a year on. Do I still like it, and would I still recommend this bike to any of you guys? Yes, I would definitely recommend it to you if you like this type of bike, that is. And yes, I'm still really enjoying this bike 1 year on and have no intention to sell it on for something else. And I would even recommend this Indian Scout Bobber to riders that's coming away from sports bike that may be looking at something like this, something a bit different but still has a bit of power, etc. to have fun on, because it is still surprisingly fast and fun, just to use in a different way, of course. I can honestly say I think it's one of the best things I've personally bought over the years, and I've owned a lot of stuff. I'm not just saying that. You just can't fault what this bike has got to offer for the money. I'm always looking forward for my next ride out, to be honest with you, every time. Yes, it hasn't got loads of modern technology installed onto the bike like many other manufacturers have these days for the money, and yes, it has a few little issues like struggling to start in really cold weather conditions like in the colder months. But to be honest with you, there are plenty of people on forums and Facebook pages that can give you advice on what to change or better your bike to prevent these issues like these happening. But overall, this machine gives you amazing sounds and power. I would say having this aftermarket exhaust, to be honest with you guys, fitted has made this bike way more enjoyable and fun to ride with, because it just sounds so aggressive, which I really like personally. It just always puts a smile on your face. You also get a really good engaged feel with the bike once you've ridden it a good few times too. It also handles very well and smooth. You can improve this also by changing the tyres to better ones, change the suspension, the seat and the handlebars, which is all optional of course. The bike also draws attention everywhere I go because of the look. I get people all of the time stopping and complimenting the bike and sharing stories with like what they've had previous bike wise and experiences that they've had as well too. It's also built very well and feels well made when riding, which is nice. Just trying to think of a few more things about it. I also like the fact that the Indian has just kept everything simple enough on the Scout Bobber, so you know you're experiencing an engaged ride every time you go out on it. Instead of having like loads of different modes that controls the bike, it just makes everything feel way more raw when you ride, which is something that I personally like. Now, if you're looking at buying one of these Indians, there is a couple of little things that you should look out for. So where the gear lever is, down here, you can see you've got this rod going across to here, and it's on this splined shaft. Now what tends to happen is this bolt just here likes to come loose. There's been some riders online that's been stranded in the middle of nowhere with this just flopping onto the floor. So the thing to do here is just undo this bolt, pop a bit of Loctite on the thread and pop it back in. So I've done that to mine now, so hopefully I don't get that issue. You can also do the same with the bolt down the other end, but it's just a little thing to kind of make sure you do if you do get one of these bikes, because the last thing you want is to be stranded in the middle of nowhere like where I am now. Look, if you imagine that gear link has just come off, you've got no spare shaft on you, and you're going to have to try and figure out a way how to change gears by twisting this down here, or get someone to come out to rescue you. So it's just a little thing for you to look out for. Now another thing that I would definitely say look out for, which sounds pretty obvious, is make sure you brake enough when you approach sharp bends, because this bike has only got a 29-degree lean angle, which you guys would probably know if you've been looking at all the specs and stuff, but that actually almost caught me out when I first got onto the road. I approached a really tight bend, didn't get the speed down enough, lent the bike but not enough, and ended up going out wide. So it does make you learn to make sure you do get that speed down enough or lean that bike over more, but just bear in mind the pegs will catch onto the floor, and the last thing you want is to be dropping that machine. So just something that I would recommend if you do end up looking at getting one of these bikes yourself. And now let's go over a few things with the Indian Scout Bobber that I would consider changing if you're looking at buying one of these bikes. So one of the first things that I really wanted to change on this bike, which I found out very quickly, was the comfort of the seat. So I had the stock one on there before, and it was just too uncomfortable on longer journeys. So I've got this seat now fitted, and it's so much better. Like, I can bear the comfort now on longer journeys, whereas before I was probably doing an hour to an hour and a half riding, and I had to pull over to give my sort of lower back a rest. But this was made in the USA by a company called Cycle Ops. It's all like completely custom made with different stuff inside. It's just so much better, and it looks really smart too. So that's one thing that I would consider changing if you are looking at getting one of these Scout Bobbers, is the seat. Over to the second thing, and that's just down here, and that is the rear suspension that this bike has. Now this is a bit of a weird one, because yes, this bike does give a very hard feel on the suspension. If you hit potholes or drain covers, anything like that, pretty much, you do know about it on your lower back. But when you're on smooth roads, this bike handles so well with the stock suspension, you don't really need to do anything with it. However, if you do want to replace this rear suspension, if you end up buying one of these bikes, it's not the end of the world. There's loads of different companies out there that's made the better rear shocks for this bike. Just bear in mind, you are looking anywhere from sort of £600 to probably £1,200, I would say, depending what brand you go for. But it's not the end of the world if you do leave it on. You can see I've still got mine on there, and I will probably upgrade this probably somewhere in the future, but at the moment it's no big deal. And again, if you come over to the front, you can replace all of the internals in here if you find the front too hard too, but I've left mine as it is. The next change I would recommend that makes a huge difference is changing the stock tyres over to some really decent performance tyres. This is something I've just had fitted on my bike, and this is probably the sort of 4th ride now since I've had them fitted from brand new. This rear tyre here, I need to do a separate video on actually, is a 180 width tyre, so before it's a 150. This has made a massive difference to the way it feels, and it just grips a lot more better on the road, I must admit. I'll just show you where the size is, just down here. So you can see it's a 180/70 R16. And to be honest with you guys, this has gone straight onto a stock rim from factory. I've got no issues with any sort of fouling on it. Like I said now, since I've had these fitted, it has changed the sort of feel of the bike massively. The front is exactly the same tyre size from factory, so a 130/90 B16, and again Avon Cobra Chrome. So there's loads of different manufacturers out there. If you don't want the Avon Cobra Chromes, I can put a list on the screen now for some of the other tyres that I was looking at. All of them's got good reviews. It's just all, I think it's just personal preference, to be honest with you, what kind of style tyre you like the look of and what performance you're wanting out of the bike. To be honest, other than those 3 things, the only other thing I would say to change if you don't like the look of them is the rear indicators. So you can see I've got aftermarket ones fitted, and that goes with the front too. These are tiny little LED ones. Just pop one on a minute for you. So they are really bright, and I've also changed the headlight too. That's another thing you can change very easy. I've popped a video on my channel of how to do that and how to add this mesh grille on too. But I just think it makes a massive improvement of the look of the bike. This number plate shouldn't be on there, I've just found out, because you're not allowed black and silver plates. So I've just ordered a little number plate the same size but in yellow and black. So it does look smart with that number plate, of course, but if it's illegal then I can't run it. And the only other thing that I would say that it does annoy me, and this does annoy me, is having no fuel gauge on this bike. So you turn the ignition on, the only thing you've got is your mileage and a few other little things like the trip, the RPMs when you're riding, the temperature of the engine, and that's pretty much it. But you've got no fuel gauge, and it really does annoy me, especially when you put the bike away for the colder months and you forget like what the mileage was on when you last filled up, so you don't know how many miles you've got left. But it is what it is. Just keep an eye on the fuel in the tank and just make regular stops and you'll have no issues. Actually, there is one more thing, and this is more for tall people. If you're a really tall person and you're looking at maybe test riding one of these bikes, which I highly recommend you do first, because there's so many mixed reviews for tall people if they feel comfortable on this bike or not. But I just want to show you a couple of things first that you can change on this bike if you are considering still buying one. So let's go back down to where the foot control area is yet again. So you can actually buy conversion kits online to extend all of these controls, which helps taller people out. And you can also change things like the handlebars. The seat, like I said earlier, the suspension will massively help if you change all that. That will transform this bike for taller people, but the fit on this bike, absolutely perfect. That's why I don't need to tamper with anything really. The only thing I wanted to change really was the seat, like I said. But again, it's not cheap on the Indians. Things like that kit on there, I think it's probably quite high, 3 digits to be honest with you, to change. And I'm not really sure how much things like the handlebars are to change, but I can't imagine that being cheap either. But these are things you should take into account depending on what deal you've got on the bike that you're looking at. Very last thing that I would change on this bobber is the exhaust from factory to some aftermarket ones. These ones that I've got fitted to my bike are called Maverick crusher pipes, and they are ridiculously loud. But to be honest with you guys, if I didn't have those exhausts on there, it doesn't make the bike as exciting, I don't think, as it should be. It just sounds so aggressive with this exhaust fitted. It's just a must-have on this bike, and it does turn heads everywhere, and I'm not surprised because it is so loud. So I think that's pretty much everything that I need to tell you guys with today's video. Would I recommend this bike to you guys? I 100% would. Definitely give one a test ride and just see what you think before obviously handing over that kind of money before you buy one. But yeah, I'm so happy with it. I do not regret buying it. And yeah, I've got so many more plans to do on this bike yet. Now before I go, I'm going to jump back on this just to have a little bit of fun, to show you guys what this thing's like. And then that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you all in the next one very soon.